But there are myths as well. If you use Copilot or if you use GenAI, it generates the code, but that code doesn't run.
By 2030, we were supposed to be, in the age of super intelligence.
What this manager does, because we are the one who are doing coding, we are the one who are delivering the product. What this gentleman is doing.
That is probably the direction we are going towards. It's going to be a mix of human plus AI.
So, for example, if Anil is working in this company, Anil might be working in some different company with my agent delegated to that in this NVIDIA workshop. They were talking about when you started using GenAI, we started building this years back. They are saying they are already working on super intelligence, to your point, which means quantum computing and things like that. Hi, this is your friend Anil, and welcome to AB Talk series of the podcast. So, in today's podcast, I'm going to invite someone very special guest. He had decades of experience, wrote a book on anonymization and digital transformation, had multiple US patents on his name, and he has started his life early as an architect, worked into consulting, and with his experience and worked across multiple geographies like US, UK, Europe, and so on and so forth. I'm pretty excited about the podcast. Let's start and invite our guest, Mr. Balaji. So, Mr. Balaji, I would like to understand more about your journey and really impressed, as I mentioned in my introduction. So, just wanted to like start. What were the days when you were like studying, and then how you thought about coming to the technology world? So, let's go back and start from day one.
Sure. What I actually noticed, Anil, was in my college days when I did my engineering, I felt that I was more comfortable with programming than hardware related work. Actually, if you look at, I started as an electrical and electronics engineer, but I used to score very high when it comes to microprocessors, programming, all of those. So that's why I thought, okay, maybe software is the field I should be in. And then in 96, November 97, there were actually quite a lot of openings in the software world. Most of them were actually recruiting for the Y2K wave, right? So
Yeah.
I got selected in basically a company called Command International Software. This was a joint venture between Phoenix Home Life as well as Command Systems in US. And my first job was in Y2K. So that sort of gave me insights into the mainframe world, right? And that also helped me move to US. So I was in the US, I was actually working on mainframes. Then I was coming back and forth between India and US. I moved to web, and then again I moved to client server. So essentially it was the ASP world and the Visual Basic world, right? And then that sort of helped me give a breadth in terms of how the mainframe world behaves, and then how a web world behaves, how a client server world actually behaves. And during this time, I was in the US again. I was working for Citibank Development Center as a consultant, and that time I also realized that there was a lot of scope in terms of even automation, right, of deployment, automation of testing. And I used to develop testing tools and deployment automation tools. I mean, maybe had I licensed those, maybe I would have been a lot richer today. But yeah, I mean, I think that sort of gave me a view in terms of how do we control different threads. How should we actually look at different processes? So that sort of gave me a lot of insights into how do we build distributed systems, how do we build web-based systems too. So this
Yeah.
product I was actually working for was also one of the first email alerting tool. After that, basically, I came back to India. I was with iFlex. Then I was in Mumbai. That sort of also got me into the world of how product companies work, right? And then I moved to Infosys, and in Infosys I spent about 12 years of my career. So that sort of helped me get into the depth of technology architecture, technology consulting. So again, I used to consult for multiple customers. I used to go with one of the best management consultants at that time. I actually working very closely with him for defining the transformation journey, while he used to actually look at it from a business perspective. I used to actually look at it from a technology perspective. So that sort of gave me a lot of insights into how technology decisions are made, how investments are made also. Then, yeah, I mean, I think being in the consulting field also helped me not just look at US, but also a lot of countries in Europe. So I ended up consulting in Norway, in Netherlands, in New Zealand. So that also gave me, the chance to appreciate a lot of cultures, visit all these countries too. So I think
Yeah.
what I would say is, like, by that time, I was sort of well versed in terms of geography, in terms of handling multiple customers in multiple regions, as well as handling the complexities related to technology. After that, yeah, I moved to iGate as a mobility practice lead, and then I was actually into digital transformation
Right.
around 2014 and 15. This was quite hot. So I used to handle the delivery for the BFSI customers of iGate for all the digital portfolio, and
Yeah.
that sort of also gave me an insights into how to look banking digital transformation, financial services
Yeah.
digital transformation. And also, like, as part of Infosys also, I did spend some time in the Infosys labs. So that sort of helped me get into the world of patents, IP commercialization, and also, sort of get into the authoring of books. After that, I worked for ITC Infotech. I was in the enterprise architecture space, then into the technology consulting space, in the capability building for a unit, and then pre-sales, and then the delivery leadership and unit leadership. Sort of that gave me an insights into the PNL world, as well as the data and analytics world. I already had a lot of experience in the data space, but yeah, I mean, I think the big data world, I got a lot of experience into that, as well as the customer experience world. So yeah, I mean, that's been my journey. So that
That's
also.
fantastic. And I don't want to like interrupt you during the flow, but I have very pointed questions, and I'm sure like anyone who is going to watch this, they
Yeah.
will pretty much connect with it. So when you started in 97,
Hmm.
what was the first programming language that you used?
Yeah, you would have already guessed it. It is COBOL.
Now I'm coming to the next question, right? Because my friends who are working in MX, right, the other banking organizations, one thing that's been going for decades is the stability of mainframe, right? Everyone wants to go and migrate and modernize, but have you seen this problem being solved where someone has truly migrated from mainframe to the modern world and completely microservices based? There are so many companies like IBM that are claiming that they can modernize, but have you seen that success so far?
Yeah, so what I've seen in my career so far is, like, people are definitely moving key capabilities out of mainframes, but have they moved completely out of mainframes? That is still a question actually for me. What I've been associated with as part of a few projects is migration of particular systems. Out of mainframes, and also, the reasons were interesting, not because of the capability. It was more because people who were maintaining those systems were getting old, right? And
Yeah,
they're not actually having people who can actually help them support and
yeah.
enhance these particular systems. So that's basically what I've seen. Yeah, so for
So I, and interestingly, I met with someone as part of like my consulting journey, and that gentleman is planning to move away from mainframe to latest technologies, and just for the same reason. Technology is working well, but the resources, because they are like 55 years, 56 years, right? And they are about to retire, and the new talent they are not able to build. So one, there is a problem of right resources being able to support this system. And second thing, just because this if the knowledge is gone, right, it will become much more difficult to migrate. So
yeah.
that's where like this is always a hot topic of discussion when someone is talking about the legacy migration from these systems. But hats off to the engineers and architects that time who designed such a stable system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look at, we borrow a lot of, the concepts from mainframes, right? Like, for example, the timeshare system. So that was like a fantastic system. Some of these, they are actually very good from, reliability and optimal resource utilization perspective. I think, yeah, I mean, I think if we want to look at anything scalable, if we want to look at something reliable from a business perspective, I think, yeah, mainframe played a very big role in that.
And are you seeing like any efforts even these days? And what is the best migration tool? Like if you had seen someone's journey, like have do you recommend that someone should use this strategy or the other strategy?
Yeah, I think today, uh, I mean, what I see is like there is a lot of AI based tools, which actually help you reduce migration. The strategy should be not just focused only on the migration tools, but also the architecture, right? So, for example,
Yep.
you have to look at, where you need queuing, where you need, batch. All of these also comes into picture, and it'll not just be a code migration aspect, but you have to actually see, from even a queuing perspective or from a batch perspective, whether you need the same levels of reliability, resiliency, all of those, and then plan for those. So if you don't plan and treat it just like a migration project, that project is not going to be successful. So I think the key part is more in terms of, event-based architecture. How do you want to handle queues, right? How do you want to handle, any of this kind of resiliency aspects, architectural aspects? I think that plays a bigger role. Of course, like I think in terms of code migration, things are becoming a lot more easier today because of the GenAI based tools today.
But there are myths as well. If you use Copilot or if you use GenAI, so it actually adds time for a complex use case. Like it generates the code, but that code doesn't run, right? So then you have to invest more time in fixing that code generated by LLMs, right?
Yeah, yeah, but I think with Watson, I think IBM is providing a good stack, at least in terms of migration,
From
from
mainframe.
mainframes. But again, yeah, the code part is what is getting easier. The architecture part, you still have to, plan for it.
Right. Moving to the next question, right? You mentioned that you worked at Infosys. I also got a chance for a very small stint. I worked with Infosys. And one thing for which I joined, because I still remember 2008 when Infosys came to the campus, and that time I had already cleared round in some different organization. And then, but I was just like, because I was waiting for the offer letter and I was allowed to appear for Infosys, and unfortunately my name did not pick when I looked at their presentation. And that's something even I today follow when I go for a campus hiring. The presentation is such attractive, engaging. They talk about the campus, they talk about the future, they talk about different business units, right? I was so much attached to it that I felt so bad when my name was not picked. And that's the reason when I got a chance, I started with Infosys again. So how was like how big the Infosys was that time?
Yeah, I think it was interesting because when I joined, there were about some 12,000, 13,000 people. And
Wow.
yeah, that's when I joined, and I think I saw it go, from maybe somewhere around some 600, 700 million, and within a year, I was part of, I mean, we had a celebration for $1 billion uh, day, right? And I think that
Yeah.
time there were like very few companies, at least from India, $1 billion. And
Yeah.
then I think once they touched a billion, I think that actually sort of helped them leap much more forward, right? So I
Yeah.
think yeah, I've been through that journey, and yeah, I think like what was very striking there was like the systems and processes, right? I think they just run automatically. You don't need too much of human interventions. So I think that
Exactly.
whole process efficiency and it is like you have a template for everything and you have a best
All
practice
right.
template for everything. If you want to pick a digital engineer, how would you make a fresher into a digital engineer? Then how would you actually create a template for somebody who can move from an engineer to an architect? So in fact, like
Yeah.
me, when I joined as a tech lead, I was asked to actually take some architecture trainings, right? That
Yeah.
sort of gave me a kind of systemic view, how should you look at systems, right? And then once I started getting into the consulting engagements, there was again a lot of focus on consulting, trainings. How should you do requirements, right? Like for example, when a lot of people do requirements, they actually look at what should be the solution, right? So basically, there in that consulting framework, I learned that your requirements gathering and your requirements definition, they are different activities. If you try
Yeah.
to define the requirements and you gather the requirements, you will actually miss out on the key requirements what the customer wants. So I think some of those frameworks I really loved. I also wanted to talk to you about a couple of very interesting incidences, right? So I
Yeah.
went to Japan, and one of the challenges what we had was like language, of course, right? But
Yeah.
went with the management consultant whom I went with. I think he did a fantastic job, right? So what he did was like he defined the problem, and then he actually, sort of came out with the architecture itself. I mean, architecture as in the business architecture and the logical architecture. We actually talked to about 20 different senior unit heads, right? And they got their teams. So we had 20
Okay.
workshops over a period of 20 days. And we went actually with, our view of what is the solution. And, because it was pictorial, right? There was very less chances of misinterpretation actually. So I think, so how that actually, proved that, a picture, speaks thousand words.
Yeah.
Language is not actually a barrier for, communicating with, other, country folks. So I think that whole concept of how a picture talks, I think I learned that a lot, right? Then there was
Visual storytelling, right?
yeah, visual storytelling, right? So I
Yeah.
think that was something very impressive what I learned. The other thing what I also learned is that I went to UK and I had to build a system for geological engineers, right? Uh, I did not know geology, right? So, but I had to define a system for them. But I
Yeah.
think they applied many of what I learned in the consulting space, right? All those consulting trainings in that particular engagement. It was a 3 month kind of engagement. And the geological engineers, they only spoke geology, right? Did not know anything about architecture. Till, they had an IT architecture aspirant sort of, aligned with me. I think she knew a little bit of business, but again, not much about the technology, right? But I was like really wondering, how will I be able to map the geological world with the technology world? But I think all those principles sort of help me. I think the best feedback, what gave me satisfaction was like, she told me the IT architecture assistant, she and as well as the manager who was program managing this whole initiative, they told me that the first day we realized that you don't know anything about geology. Actually, sort of happy with the way you were open in your mind. You were willing to take, whatever we told, then sort of synthesize it and then come out with, recommendations. Again, there were a lot of conflicting demand, right? The geological guys, they knew some tools, right? And they told me you have to use this tool. While the
Yeah.
program manager, his whole focus was how do I reduce cost from this tool? Should I take a portion of this tool or build a custom app around it? So I think that
Right.
he was able to balance all those, and I think the
Yeah.
feedback was sort of what gave me a lot of satisfaction because okay, was subject, but I was able to design a solution in terms of the direction it should go and the high level architecture.
I would resonate with both of these points, and these are very valid. First, related to process, I want to share my experience because I call Infosys is very process-oriented organization, right? So in most of the organizations I worked for, let's say that very simple employee onboarding. If as a hiring manager you raise a laptop request, then it goes to multiple level of approval, and then you have to follow with them manually, right? With Infosys, the situation was if you raised a laptop request, if someone doesn't decline, it gets auto approved, right? So if you have to decline, do it within the SLA. Otherwise, it will go and follow all the approvals, and then laptop will be shipped. So that's one thing, which means it's a non-blocker approval process, right? You need not to like you can just take action against it, but you have to approve. Otherwise, if you're just sitting it in your queue, this gets auto approved. So that creates some alertness. And second thing related to like Infosys definitely gives a lot of chance. I remember like it was initial first or second week I was hired for the Finacle business unit. My manager told me like Anil, just these are your documents, read through it, and you have to give trainings on Finacle. And then there are experts. At that time, I remember like I had 4 or 5 years of experience just because I had no billable work. So my manager thought utilizing me for the training. I said, I don't have subject matter expertise in this area. Then he paired me with some senior person, and like Infosys is very structured in terms of their like learning and development department. So that worked really well. I was able to like learn through it, and then he put me in a project. So then I could actually connect, okay, why he put me in a training first, and then basically I was giving the training, which means when you have to give the training, you have to learn it, you have to ask right questions, and then you can implement, right? So that's I really loved about that experience within Infosys. Moving ahead, which campus did you like the most?
Yeah, I think for work, of course, it was Bangalore. For leisure, it was Mysore.
Mysore, yeah.
So yeah, I think
Definitely.
Mysore was
Even
like really beautiful. Yeah.
after I left Infosys, I went through one of my common friends just to visit because I thought to join Mysore campus, but it was just for like someone who's hired from campus. But I joined as a lateral employee. So I then, after resigning from Infosys, that time I was working for another company. I moved there, visited the campus, and I always say there are two iconic places. One is Mysore Palace, and
Hmm.
second is Infosys campus. So that's pretty much my experience, and some of the services over there are definitely awesome. So, but tell me more about like you mentioned that through Infosys or some of these engagements, you moved to US, right? How was the cultural difference that you observed during that time? I know that there are more folks traveling to US these days, right? Some in someone's family, like 1 or 2 person, they're already in US, right? So now it's much more exposed and it's normal. But what about those days?
Infosys was not my first US experience, right? So as soon as I joined Command in my second year of my career, I went to US. So I think what helped me was like I went with a set of friends. I think that sort of gave me that community. And of course, like I think when you go to US, you see more, you think more about the Hollywood movies, and you think that everybody will be like that. But once I went to this place, I went to a place called Syracuse, right? So I saw that, that's not true, right? They had so much of a family culture. And in fact, like some of the culture was relatable to Indian families of yesteryears, right? Like, for example,
Yeah.
eat your dinner by 7. My grandfather used to do that. So they never used to eat after 7. Even that's what I observed. I think there was a lot of difference for me in terms of what was my perception and what was the actual reality. When it comes to US, there's a lot of focus on how do you communicate. So how do you ensure that the other person understands, what you want to tell. I think basically what I felt was the main difference. I think from a cultural perspective, we are probably more technical and mathematical and logical. But I think when it comes to communication, we either hesitate, and I think that whole difference between,
They can talk about goal for 1 hour. They can talk about right. That's the most interesting thing when I moved to US, right? Because we know cricket, right? And now we started knowing football. But they talk about some of the game that's not culturally fit, at least when you just moved out of India, right? They talk about their festivals that you are not able to connect with. But maybe I think living in this culture for a long time, right, that exposed to some of these names, which at least you can hold a conversation around. But yeah, please go ahead and complete your thought.
yeah. I think that whole concept of, how do you ask things without being aggressive. So, because I think in the Asian context, you can either be mild or you can
Yeah,
be, aggressive. I think
yeah,
the in between behavior, right, that is less. But I think in US, I learned that, how you can also not be aggressive and not be mild, but still get your things done. I think some of those definitely helped actually. And also, what I also felt is I think when it comes to program management and planning, I think especially when you work with large enterprises, I think there is a lot of focus on how do you do program management, highlight risks at an early stage, get a buy-in. Because a lot of
yeah.
times what happens is like the project may be going, in the wrong direction, but we actually culturally we hesitate to say that it is going wrong, right? And only deliver, we figure out that this was missed and this was not missed. But what I learned is like when you look at very large companies, especially in the US, I think their program management is like top class, right? So they
Yeah.
plan everything, right? Not just for within that particular project, but they look at how multiple projects get related. Even if I have to talk to a different team member, that would also be recorded as part of the plan. So I think all of those aspects, how do you plan better, all of those I did learn quite a lot actually.
Definitely, and I think they more than the success, more than like saying no is the big thing, right? And that's where like I've seen the maturity in US market. They are bold enough. They'll say like, if you do this, the program will fail, and I'm not going to be part of it, right? They isolate themselves from the beginning, in between the program, but we somehow like have that burden to carry this just because we said at the beginning, right? That yes, we can do. So I think that's also one of the cultural difference, and I can completely correlate with your thought process here. That's something Indian leaders or managers should start doing. This will help them. They think like if they start saying no, it is going to like create problem for them. It will like stop business coming to India, but it is not the case. Now I can correlate more with some of the programs being super successful, some of the programs not being super successful, and I can completely understand. Now, there is one thing that mostly I discuss with my team also. In US, when you assign someone a task, right, especially like those who are native here or someone who like stayed in US for a very long time, and then you forget about the task. Whereas in India, you need a scrum master, you need project managers, tech lead, a lot of hierarchies. Did you observe like throughout your experience?
More than a culture, I think it is more to do with the size of the company. So basically,
Hmm.
I think if it is more of a smaller size company, you end up doing a lot of things yourself and you
Yeah,
learn a lot, right? But whereas if it is basically a bigger company, you end up, having different departments and different people doing different things. So you have to raise a request, then you need people to manage multiple people, you need people who will develop, who will test. So I think that whole, and you basically you need people who will manage, and that's how you get into a lot of managerial challenges and needing
yeah,
manager and manager of managers, all that. So I think what I felt is like it's more to do with the size of the company. I think if you're in a startup, you're or in a smaller size company, you end up doing quite a lot of things yourself. Whereas if you're
right.
a much bigger company, you need multiple layers. And also, like, I think it's a trade-off between, agility, speed, and governance. So I think as you grow, you probably focus more on governance, and governance means you need to add more and more managers, right? That's basically what ends up happening.
So coming to the next question, right? You mentioned about your architect experience, and I also come from architect background where I designed solutions on more like a system designing for mobile application, web application, and then a little bit on the BPM side of the world. How important the role of an architect in any organization?
Yeah. So in the modern world, the focus is on getting things done in 2 days and 3 days, right? If you look at what an architect does, right, they actually break down the complexity, right? So they actually help in telling you what are the components of a system and what are the communications within and outside the system, right? So if you don't do that breakup, what will end up happening is you will go from grounds up, right? So you may be successful in 2 iterations, 3 iterations, but then what ends up happening is your cost of change goes up, right? So basically, what I would say is if some system needs to be enterprise grade, needs to, scale, right? You need to have, an architecture for that. Now, you can have different roles, right? The role of architect itself is not uniform, right? Some people have IT architects, some people have software architects, some people have solution architects, some people have enterprise architects. And in some companies, you have tech leads themselves performing the role of the architects. For me, an architect is necessary if you want to actually reduce the cost of your change and make your
Yeah,
system more maintainable, more integrable with the ecosystem, and also, help communicate what the system does in different perspectives. If you don't
right.
that particular role, whatever you call it, then you're setting up yourself for failure.
200% agree. So basically controlling the tech debt and
Yeah.
controlling the overall program. So architect work as a glue across multiple teams, technical, non-technical, right? And helping developers also whenever, and especially when there are huge data coming in, there are complex systems. I personally feel the role of an architect has lifted a lot, right? And because of so much complexities across. If you say like someone should plan to become enterprise architect or solution architect, right? What are top 4 or 5 things that you would suggest, and what are like the certifications or any learning guidance that you want to give?
Yeah, I think that's topic very close to my heart, and I've actually done it in my entire career. I've done that for quite a lot of people, right? So essentially, if you look at the path, right, you actually start from a tech lead perspective, or whatever you call it. It could be tech lead, or you could be a senior development engineer, or whatever it is, right? But essentially, you need that mindset shift, right? So for an architect, you need to not only look at how your components talk to each other, but how your component will talk to your ecosystem, and what is the impact of your system. You want to actually describe your system in 5 minutes, right? Would I be able to describe it, right? Because when you do that,
Yeah,
an engineer, they'll get into like very specific, modules, right? So I think that mindset shift assessment is needed first, right? So that is first. So basically, the path is you actually come from a tech leadership perspective, and I mean, you probably are a tech lead, but from tech lead, you actually become a software architect. If you're into coding, or if you're into infrastructure, it is an IT architect or a cloud architect. So there are three different paths. After that, you become a solution architect, right? So solution architect, you will end up integrating multiple systems. Solution architecture comes into piece, and after that, you become an enterprise architect. As an enterprise architect, you should be able to define, for my business goals, what should be the systems, right? So you should be able to be a bridge, like what you told, between the business and the IT. So that's where your enterprise architect comes into picture. So it's actually a journey. What you need is, for becoming a tech architect or a software architect, you need some of the platform specific architecture certifications, right? So of course, like certifications are more to just give you that basic foundation, but of course, like you have to implement it, right? And you get that with experience. So maybe an Azure certification or AWS certification, that can be the path, right? So to get into that architect role, but once you're an architect, you will need to look at, basically it's a trade-off, right? How much you should get deep, how much you should get wide, right? I think
Yeah.
uh,
T-shaped engineer.
yeah, correct. So
Yeah.
that confusion is always in the mind, right? So one is how much you should get into that breadth and depth, and
Yeah.
then the second part is based on the stakeholder. Whom should you get in with the breadth perspective, and whom should you get in
Yeah.
from depth perspective, and to what level you should go from a depth perspective, what level you should go from a breadth perspective. If I talk to a developer and I just talk at a very high level saying that these are the systems, then I'm not going to get my work done, and that's not going to meet their objective. Also, they're not also going to understand why they are building that system, right? So essentially, that views of what depth you should go, what breadth you should go, that is what you get as part of the solution architect role, right? And here, service company perspective, but again, even from a product perspective, your role will be slightly different. You will be managing the architecture, or you'll be designing the architecture for multiple different systems, right? So
Right.
essentially, that whole gradation from technology specific
Yeah.
expertise to a kind of solution specific expertise. Solution is a mixture of multiple components, multiple systems, multiple technologies, right? How do you handle diversity, both in terms of people, process, technology, right? That's what you learn when it comes to solution architecture. When you can actually talk business, right? You move into the business technology aspect, you see how your business goals are met by your technology goals, right? That's where your enterprise architecture comes into place. You should know, okay, if I'm looking at sales process, what are the capabilities I need? For those capabilities, what are the technologies I already have? What should I buy new? How do I mix and match both of these? Like, for example, in today's world, as an enterprise architect, you need to know what are the autonomous systems you should provision for, and what are the non-autonomous systems you should already have, and how will ensure that both of them interact for the good of the business, or for achieving a business goal, right? So essentially, you look at it more from a business perspective and how technology relates to that business. So that's when you get into an enterprise architect role. Enterprise architect is where you have quite a lot of frameworks. TOGAF is like
I did TOGAF. I remember, like, and these days there are so many popular YouTubers, and I'm impressed because I, like, 4 or 5 years back when I was planning for some product company interviews, that system design, right? There are so many things. There's CAP theorem. There are like different cluster, how to manage nodes, and then with the complexity of GenAI, right? Even how to control the token usage. That is also part of that. And one interesting thing that I started, because I work with the partners like Google, Microsoft, NVIDIA, right? I saw that in all their sales conversations or regular conversations, they bring in one architect with them, right? That architect is actually helping you on ground, understanding your problem, because sales guy just know how to run the PPTs, right? But this guy knows much more deeper into it, and that's how, like, even their sales team is coming with some tech experience, right? So that's one common overlap that I started seeing. So be it a Databricks team, be it a Microsoft team or NVIDIA team, everyone has those like architect in that mix of the sales group. That's very interesting. Now, moving ahead in our conversation, right? I just want to understand, what is the most difficult role or the most boring role that you want to say, because you worked as an architect, you worked as a consultant, you are leading a big team now, right? Or maybe intent program. So which role did you find difficult, or oh, how was the journey?
Yeah, I'll actually say that you have trade-offs in every role, right?
Yeah.
So, in fact, I think I wanted to tell that as part of the previous question itself, right? So, essentially, I think we need to understand what is your goal in life, right? And
Yeah.
what are you? uh, wanting to achieve. So there'll be a lot of things which you'll be comfortable with. There'll be a lot of things which you'll not be comfortable with. So I think, yeah, I think every role has a mix of business, technology, and operational aspects, right? And when you're an architect or in the technical stream, you're focused more on the technology aspects. Of course, like business and operational are necessary, but that percentage is like very, very small. But when you start handling teams, right, I think that business perspective comes into picture and people issues come into picture. How do you handle that people
I
issue?
saw that smile when you start talking about people issues because I personally feel that is the most challenging
Correct.
work. Working, managing others people work is most challenging. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that whole people issues, right? How you handle, and then of course, like then there are also process issues, right? Like you may have to, approve so many requests or, some of those kind of things. And especially if a process is not fully designed well, right? If
Yeah.
there's a lot of friction, you have to follow up with multiple people to get something done, right? How do you handle bureaucracy? So all of these are some things which we'll have to learn from a growth perspective. Yeah, you can either say that I don't want to handle people, I'll be an individual contributor. That's still very good. If you say I want to look at more from a business perspective, I want to handle multiple areas of expertise.
I still remember those days when I was at a developer or senior developer level. I always like talk to my friends what this manager does, right? Because shows really busy what he does because we are the one who are doing coding, we are the one who are delivering the product. What this gentleman is doing, right? Now the other side of the table, right? Now we started thinking what this developer is doing, right? Why he's not able to deliver the thing on time,
Yeah.
why he's creating a lot of work for me. So yeah, it's just a life cycle. And to your point, I think when you have the bigger team, you should be able to achieve bigger mission, right? So when you have a team of architect, you have team of developers, you have team of great engineers, you could actually achieve more, right? So you have the leverage of all these individual folks. When you're working as an individual contributor, definitely you are laser focused. So if a design a strategy, maybe I want to do it alone. But when I want to execute it, I cannot do alone, right? So that's kind of a trade-off completely correlated with that thought process.
I mean, you can focus, you get time to focus more as an individual
Yeah.
contributor. But yeah, I mean, I think when you get into wider roles, you will need others buy-in also. How much you enjoy these kind of worlds. Of course, there'll be drudgery in a lot of things. Even as an architect, you may feel, okay, I started with this guy, but this guy has actually grown to, lead this particular
Yeah.
unit. So I think all of those different things also comes into play. So, yeah, there's nothing right or wrong, I would say.
Definitely. And since this is AB Talks on AI, right? So let's move and talk about some of the because I know there is so much experience that you carry, right? We can just talk throughout the day, but our discussion will not stop. And maybe we will plan for another follow-up. But there are a few pointed questions I want to definitely bring and discuss in this podcast itself. What is your vision? How AI will evolve by 2030?
There is this interesting concept called singularity, right? So it is basically about, the race between technology and humans or, living species, right? So
Yeah.
essentially, over a period of time, what AI can achieve, was that of what rat could achieve, right? But that is now grown over a period of time. By 2030, we were supposed to be, in the age of super intelligence,
Yeah.
right? So that's what that singularity actually talks about. But I think looking at especially the last 2, 3 years of the growth in the AI space and how it has evolved, maybe we'll achieve probably that singularity, the super intelligence much more earlier. I think right now the constraint is not the storage or the compute or the network. It is more actually the physical resources. If you look at it from a power perspective, water perspective, right? So I think we have gone to consuming more natural resources. So I think now
Yeah.
the constraint in terms of intelligence is more on how efficiently you're going to be able to use the natural resources than the storage or the network or the compute. I think this was something which we were also thinking when in my previous book, right? So it's going to be more of a human control over not just human but also agents, right? So it'll be something like, your company may not matter, for example, because what will end up, see, as an employee, there is only limited value for every company. What will end up happening is you can have whatever knowledge you have gained as part of the company's process, you can actually have that knowledge transferred, recorded, and transferred. And then basically, your bot can actually take over, right? What will end up also happening is, so essentially, they may not need what you were doing in that particular role. I mean, they may still need you, but they may not need what you were doing as part of that role, right? Like what it would end up happening is, the agents may start having an employee number. So what ends up happening is, like, you may join as a manager in a company. You may be told, okay, you take this HR agent, you take this accounts agent, you take this software engineer, and now you achieve what you want, what you're told, right? So essentially, you may be told that I'll give you two humans and four bots, right? And you can actually do those, achieve whatever job you signed up for, right? That is probably the direction we are going towards. It's going to be a mix of human plus AI, and essentially a lot of codified agents are going to come into place. So these agents can help you either in taking the decisions or doing, some actions on behalf of you. Of course, like there will be a lot of challenges also. Like for example, if you were able to achieve some particular outcome for a company, what you may do is you might have trained all those agents, right? So you might those agents into a different company or your own company. The companies also may have a lot of IP thefts happening in that sense, because they may lose suddenly. They may see that although they have codified all these agents, they are suddenly losing some capability in a particular area, and that might be because either some employees may be selling it to some other companies or their competitors, or so essentially, like, what I think now, the challenge is more in terms of governance. Is an agent authorized to do what a human is, right? I think that is going to be more and more a concern. What is going to take place? I think that is.
Definitely, and I just want to like double click on this one. So when I was in this NVIDIA workshop, right, 2 days back, they were talking about when you started using Gen AI, we started building this years back. Just because you started using it right now, that doesn't mean like it was just developed then and there. And similarly, when agentic has already hit the marketplace, they were working on it like a couple of years already. They are saying they are already working on super intelligence, right? To your point, which means quantum computing and things like that. This is not available to us, more like I would say, commodity, right? But this is something they are already working on, and maybe in a year or two, this is where it will reach. So very much relevant, and I think in some of the conversations I observed, the way we have our email ID, the way we have our SSN, we have Aadhaar card, there will be agent ID against each individual agent ID against a human, right? So that either they authorize that human agent, right, agent on behalf of human to do the task, or like they can work as an orchestrator agent and get the work done by others, right? So for example, if Anil is working in this company, Anil might be working in some different company with my agent delegated to that, right? So that's going to be really interesting era. Now moving to the next question, I know that you worked in different domains. Which top or two or three use cases that you see can be solved through GenAI and Agentic AI only, and where you saw the maximum value or ROI?
So I have seen an interesting use case. So this is essentially, for a contract management kind of use case, right? So
Yeah.
essentially, for this particular company, what they were actually doing was, like, they were vetting contracts for their customers. What used to happen was, like, every contract used to take about 3 to 4 days, where lawyers had to actually get involved, get to do a lot of work. There was a lot of back and forth. Because GenAI can actually summarize all this, they can actually alert you on where the contracts are not fulfilling, what you want to do, or they are not friendly enough. So they have been able to reduce this 3 days work, 3 hours, right? Value, right? So for example, instead of ending up paying something like $1,500, you end up paying, 15 to $30 per contract,
Wow.
right? So that is the kind of impact I'm saying. And all this also includes the cost of running the GenAI LLMs, right? And plus the service cost put together. That is one of a very impactful use case what I've seen, right? And what we saw was like for this particular company, the non-AI products initially were having about, they were contributing to about more than 90% of their revenue.
Yeah.
Today it is like reduced to 70% in 1 year, whereas the AI product revenue contribution has gone up to 30%, right? So essentially, like anything to do with document summarization is a great case study for GenAI. So that is one, right? Then the next thing, what I've also seen is, there is a lot of legacy unstructured information lying around in especially a lot of manufacturing company. They have a lot of CAD drawings. You need somebody to actually look at what are in these CAD drawings. Many of the writings within these drawings, they may have been
Yeah.
superimposed with some human handwriting also. This company had some requirement to, provide some product specifications on their product lifecycle management system. Somebody had to manually look at and then actually, type it. That also could result in some errors. You had no traceability also on what drawing they were referring to. You had to just believe what somebody was actually typing.
Yeah.
So we were actually able to create a system where GenAI was able to read the text out of these CAD drawings. Of course, like accuracy when it came to handwritten notes was like quite low, but there were quite a lot of documents, which was actually not handwritten, right? So essentially, so what we were able to see was that we could actually have just one person who was more like a human in the loop just to ensure that there is correction. But the
Yeah.
rest of the whole process was like automated. We just needed a high resolution image. And then
Yeah.
after that, GenAI could actually read the text. It could actually identify what to be exported. It could actually structure it. This is the part number. This is, the other details about that particular part. So all of these it was able to do, and it was able to update PLM system also, right? And if there were any errors or abnormalities, of course, like we used to put it into a workflow, and then the human in the loop was able to look at what this was, right, and able to rectify that.
Yeah.
So
Give AI some controls.
yeah, so I think these are some two use cases where I've seen like real impact. Of course, like
Yeah.
there are now a lot of marketing use cases from a GenAI perspective. In fact, like if you today look at LinkedIn, you may not even know which one is
Which?
bot generated and which is
Yeah.
like real ones. There are even people who are actually replying to your comments, right? So you can do a
Exactly.
lot of these things. So I think marketing and creative, this space is like really getting crunched because of
Right.
AI. It's like very, very impactful today. So that is the one, that is one thing. And also what we are seeing is like, even if you look at it from a marketing perspective, there was always a marketing department, and then there were agencies, right? So all of these are also getting crunched. I mean, they are sort of getting consolidated. These roles
Yeah.
are actually getting overlapped. So what you can do with an agent, what should be done by the marketing team, what needs to be done by the creative agency, all of that, they are getting into a kind of overlap. So I think a lot of the ways of work is getting actually redefined because of GenAI. And but yeah, I mean, I think the main thing what I would say is like it's still a productivity game for now, right? What you needed 5 days to do, probably you can do it much faster, right? So I think that is where it is. whether, and again, it's a cost reduction game. The first use case, whatever I told you also, was like more cost reduction. How do you leverage this for increasing your revenues? There, I think a lot of people are still trying to discover that. I've not seen many use cases there. So whatever use cases I've seen from a benefits perspective, it's more productivity or it is more a cost reduction use case.
Definitely, I think there are few use cases that I started seeing on the agentic space that is more from not only the productivity gain, it's more about the revenue impact. But I think the time will come short here, and as I know that we are already over time, so maybe we should plan a follow-up of this one, right? And where we should just discuss about GenAI and agentic AI. I think that can be the session two, right? And where I will request the viewer of this podcast, followers of Mr. Balaji, to reach out to us on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and put more questions for Mr. Balaji, right? So that we come as a curated, right? Whatever you want to ask as part of his team, maybe we will come with those questions. And in the next session, right, we would like to discuss with you like AI, agentic AI, and probably the super intelligence. We want to double click on that, right? And then probably see some other examples on the agentic AI. So just because I'll be respectful for your time, we'll plan a follow-up session on this one. I think here, talking about your past experience, taking to where you started working on AI, this is eye-opener, starting from mainframe to AI journey, seeing multiple waves in between, right? So definitely want to expand this and would request you to be with us on the as a continuation of this session, Mr. Balaji.
Sure, sure, Anil. It was great interacting with you. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, I really loved it, and I don't see that this is the end of the discussion. This is just it's getting more warmer, right? And we will be getting much more into the details when we talk about in a follow-up session. So
Sure.
with that, thank you so much, sir, for your time. I know that having your time over the weekend, that's too much I have asked for, but I'll not stop here. I'll ask another follow-up time as well. But be mindful for your time with family. And thank you so much for coming here and joining on this podcast while we look for another session with you, much more detailed on AI and agentic AI.
It was great interacting with you, Anil. Thanks a
Yeah,
lot for
thank
this.
you, sir.